Nia Thompson pressed her forehead against her husband's motionless hand and tried to remember how to breathe. 6 days. 6 days of watching machines keep Kang Joon-ho alive, while his body lay still as carved marble. 6 days of doctors speaking in hushed tones about traumatic brain injury and locked-in syndrome and outcomes they couldn't predict. 6 days of sitting in this sterile room that smelled like antiseptic and dying flowers, waiting for a miracle that wasn't coming. Outside the window, Seoul's November rain turned the city into a blur of neon and shadow. Somewhere out there, life continued, people laughing, working, making plans for tomorrow. In here, time had stopped the moment the black Mercedes crumpled like paper, and Joon-ho's head struck the window frame hard enough to shatter everything. "Chidorma, I need to tell you something," she whispered to his perfect, unresponsive face. The fluorescent lights made his skin look waxy, made the sharp cheekbones and defined jaw that had first caught her attention 6 months ago seem like features on a mannequin. His eyes were half open, staring at nothing. The dark brown irises that used to study her with such intensity, now empty as a doll's. The doctor said he probably couldn't hear, that the damage to his brainstem meant consciousness was unlikely, that the eye movements were just reflexes, that the steady rise and fall of his chest didn't mean the man she'd fallen in love with was still inside that body. She'd stopped believing them on day 3. "I'm pregnant," she said, the words scraping her throat raw. 8 weeks. And before you wonder, before you do the math, it's not yours. The monitors continued their steady beeping, indifferent to confession. Joon-ho's face remained slack, jaw slightly open, where the breathing tube had been removed 2 days ago. His hands, those beautiful hands with their long, elegant fingers that had guided her through Korean cooking lessons and steadied her at formal dinners, lay motionless at his sides, palms up in the position the nurses had left them. Nia's vision blurred with tears she'd been holding back since the phone call that had shattered her world. "Mrs. Kang, there's been an accident. You need to come to Seoul National University Hospital immediately." She'd been at a gallery opening in Gangnam, pretending to network while actually obsessing over how to tell Joon-ho about the pregnancy. The champagne glass had slipped from her fingers, shattered on the marble floor, and someone had asked if she was all right. She hadn't been all right since. "We never," her voice broke. She had to force the next words out. "We kept the contract. Separate bedrooms, separate lives. That was the deal, right? 1 year of marriage, $5 million, and then we'd both walk away clean." She laughed, but it was a hollow sound, empty of anything resembling humor. "Except somewhere along the way it stopped being separate. Somewhere along the way I fell in love with you. And I don't know how to unfuck this situation because the baby isn't yours and I'm the worst person alive." Behind those half-open eyes, behind the paralyzed face that showed nothing, Kang Joon-ho was screaming. He could hear every word, could feel her hand wrapped around his. Ano could feel the dampness of her tears falling onto their joined fingers, could sense the way her voice shook with guilt and grief. He was conscious, fully, devastatingly conscious, trapped in a body that refused every command his brain sent. Move, speak, blink, anything. Just do something to let her know he was here, that he was listening, that she needed to stop apologizing for something he'd known about for months. But his body remained stone. The locked-in syndrome had made him a prisoner in his own flesh, able to perceive everything while responding to nothing. He could feel the scratch of the hospital gown against his skin, the tug of IV lines in both arms, the uncomfortable pressure of lying in the same position for hours. He could hear the hum of medical equipment, the distant sounds of the hospital beyond his door, or the catch in Nia's breathing that meant she was trying not to sob. And he could do nothing. Nothing except exist in this hell and listen to the woman he loved confess sins he'd already forgiven. "It was in Paris," Nia continued, still holding his unresponsive hand like it was the only thing anchoring her to earth. 3 months before I came to Seoul for the contract. There was this man. God, I sound like such a cliche. There was this struggling artist living in a studio apartment with a leaky roof. He didn't have money or connections or any kind of future I could build on. Min-ho, Joon-ho thought, recognizing the description of his younger brother, even though Nia had no idea of the connection. You stupid romantic fool. You had to fall for the one woman I chose. When I was with him, I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt since before my father died, Nia said. He saw me, really saw me. Not the competent art curator who always has her shit together. Not the dutiful daughter trying to pay for her mother's medical care. Just me, the messy, imperfect, broken parts I don't show anyone. Her grip on his hand tightened. He called himself Kim Min. I don't even know if that was his real name. Artists lie about everything, right? Make themselves more mysterious, more interesting. We had 6 weeks. 6 perfect, impossible weeks where I let myself believe in fairy tales. And then reality crashed back in, and I had to choose between fantasy and survival. She'd chosen survival, chosen the contract marriage with Joon-ho, chosen the $5 million that would secure her mother's care for the rest of her life. It chosen stability over passion. Joon-ho couldn't blame her for that. He'd built his entire existence on choosing duty over desire, on making the practical decisions that kept people safe and empires intact. I broke it off the night before I flew back to Seoul, Nia said. Told him I couldn't do it anymore, that my mother needed care I couldn't provide, that I was going back to marry someone for money like some kind of Victorian novel character. He begged me to stay, said he'd find a way to make it work. But I left anyway because I'm practical, and he was a fantasy I couldn't afford. Joon-ho had read the surveillance reports, had seen the photos of Nia and Min-ho together in that cramped Paris studio. Ashiru had watched his brother's face in those grainy images and seen something he recognized, the expression of a man who'd found something worth keeping and was about to lose it. He'd ordered the surveillance before the contract marriage, standard protocol for anyone entering his life. Know your assets, know their vulnerabilities, know what leverage exists. What he hadn't expected was recognizing his own brother in the photographs. Min-ho, who'd been legally dead to the family for a decade. Min-ho, who'd chosen art over the Youngpa and had been erased from the family registry as punishment. Min-ho, who was using a fake name because admitting he was a Kang would make him a target for every enemy the family had accumulated over 3 generations. And Joon-ho definitely hadn't expected to fall in love with the woman his brother had loved first. The thing is, Nia continued, her voice dropping to barely a whisper, I thought I could bury it. I thought I could come back to Seoul, play the role of contract wife, keep everything compartmentalized. Business transaction. Nothing personal. Just 1 year of my life in exchange for financial security. She released his hand and stood up, moving to the window. Joon-ho could see her only in his peripheral vision now, a silhouette against the gray morning light. She'd lost weight in the 6 days since the accident. Her clothes hung looser on her frame. Her natural hair, usually styled carefully, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Without makeup, the dark brown skin that he'd spent months learning to appreciate showed the ashy undertones of stress and missed sleep. But then I met you, she said to the window. Actually met you. Not the cold CEO from the contract negotiation. Not the untouchable mafia boss everyone whispers about when they think I can't hear. So she knew, or at least suspected. The hotels were legitimate businesses, but anyone with eyes and basic pattern recognition could see the connections, could notice the way certain men treated Joon-ho with the deference usually reserved for kings or killers. I met the man who brings me tea at 2 a.m. when I can't sleep, Nia said. The man who learned to cook soul food to surprise me on my birthday. The man who held me while I cried when my mother didn't recognize me on a video call. The man who reads Yoon Dong-ju at 3 a.m. and plays Chopin when he thinks no one's listening. Joon-ho wanted to tell her that he'd played Chopin because she'd mentioned once, casually, that her father used to play piano, that she associated the sound with safety and home. He'd taught himself 3 pieces just so she could hear them drifting through the mansion at night, so she could feel less alone in a country that still sometimes felt foreign despite her 10 years in Seoul. I fell in love with you, Nia said simply. Not that burning, desperate, can't-breathe kind of love I had in Paris. Something different, deeper, the kind of love that feels like coming home after a lifetime of being lost. The kind that sneaks up on you in quiet moments, watching you concentrate on slicing vegetables just right, hearing you laugh at something stupid on television, Feeling you take my hand at formal dinners when you know I'm nervous about saying the wrong thing to your business associates? Yes, Joon-ho thought desperately. Yes. That's exactly what happened to me too. Somewhere between the contract signing and now, you became the person I couldn't imagine living without. And now you're lying here. Maybe dying, maybe already gone except for the machines breathing for you, Nia said, her voice breaking. And I'm pregnant with another man's baby. And when you wake up, if you wake up, you're going to hate me for the lie I've been living, for letting you fall for me when I was already carrying someone else's child, for being the worst kind of fraud. No, Joon-ho screamed internally, trying with every atom of his being to make his mouth form the word, to make his hand move, to do anything that would communicate the truth. The baby doesn't matter. I knew about the affair. I loved you anyway. I was going to tell you everything and ask if we could make the marriage real. But his body remained its own prison, and his words went nowhere. Nia turned back from the window. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. I made an appointment with a clinic, she said quietly, for next week. I can't bring a child into this mess. Can't raise a baby alone while wondering if you'll ever wake up. Can't keep this secret from you if you do recover. So I'm going to end it, and then at least one part of this nightmare will be resolved. No. Joon-ho focused every shred of will, every desperate need, every ounce of love and terror and protective instinct on one single command. Move, blink, twitch, something, anything. Don't let her make that decision thinking she's alone. His right eyelid flickered, just slightly. A movement so small it could have been a reflex. One could have been nothing at all. But Nia had been watching his face with the intensity of someone looking for miracles in the smallest signs. Her sharp intake of breath told him she'd seen it. Joon-ho! She moved closer, her face directly in his line of sight now. Her eyes, those expressive dark eyes that showed every emotion she felt, were wide with something between hope and disbelief. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, if you understand what I'm saying, blink. Deliberately. Not a reflex, an actual blink. Joon-ho gathered every fragment of concentration, every desperate need to communicate, and forced his right eyelid to close and open. Once, slowly, deliberately. Nia's hands flew to her mouth. A sound escaped her. Half sob, half laugh, entirely disbelieving. Oh my God, you're in there. Gosh, you're actually in there. She sank into the chair beside the bed, her legs apparently refusing to hold her. How long? How long have you been conscious? He needed to answer, but one blink for yes wasn't enough. He tried again, blinking once more, hoping she'd understand he meant since the beginning, since he first woke from the coma 5 days ago. Since they brought you out of the medically induced coma? She was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face. You've been awake this whole time? You heard everything? Everything I just told you about Paris, about the baby, about... One blink. Yes, I heard it all. Oh God! She pressed her hands against her face. Oh God, Joon-ho! I thought I was confessing to someone who couldn't hear me. I thought... She looked up at him, and the expression on her face was pure anguish. You know everything. About the affair, about the pregnancy, about how I fell in love with you while carrying another man's baby. You know, and you can't even tell me what you think, what you feel, whether you hate me or... He blinked rapidly, trying to signal no. Stop. You're wrong about everything. But rapid blinking just looked like distress, looked like the kind of involuntary movement that meant nothing. The door opened. A nurse entered, the young one who handled the day shift, whose name Joon-ho had learned was Ji-won from overheard conversations. She carried a tray with medication, her professional smile in place until she saw Nia's tear-streaked face. Mrs. Kang, is everything all right? He can hear me. Nia's voice was shaking. He's conscious. He just blinked deliberately when I asked him to. He's trapped in there. And he's been conscious this whole time. Ji-won's expression shifted from concern to skepticism. Mrs. Kang, sometimes in cases of severe brain trauma, family members can misinterpret reflexive movements as conscious responses. It's very common, And I'm not misinterpreting. Nia stood up, her voice taking on the steel that appeared when she was done being dismissed. Test him. Ask him a yes or no question and watch what happens. The nurse looked uncomfortable but approached the bed. She leaned over Joon-ho's face, studying his half-open eyes with professional assessment. Mr. Kang, if you can hear me and understand me, blink once. Joon-ho blinked, slowly, deliberately. Ji-won's professional mask cracked. Oh my, I need to get Dr. Han. Right now. She hurried out of the room, leaving Nia and Joon-ho alone with the new, only impossible reality of what came next. Nia returned to the bedside, taking his hand again. We're going to figure this out, she said, her voice steadier now despite the tears still on her face. I don't know how, but we're going to figure this out. The doctors will find a way to communicate with you better. They'll start therapy, rehabilitation, whatever it takes. And I'm going to be here every single day until you can tell me yourself what you think about everything I just told you. She brought his hand to her lips, kissing his knuckles gently. The sensation was exquisite torture, feeling her touch, her breath against his skin, while being unable to respond in any way except the crude binary of eye blinks. I don't know what happens now, she said quietly. I don't know if you can forgive me, or if you even want to try after everything you just heard, but I need you to know something. That appointment next week? I'm not going. I'm keeping this baby, and whatever happens between us, whatever you decide, when you can finally speak again, I'm going to fight to bring you back. Not because of the contract, not because of money or obligation or guilt, but because I love you, Kang Joon-ho. And love means staying, even when everything is complicated and messy, and there are no easy answers. Yes, Joon-ho thought, blinking once even though she hadn't asked a question. Yes to all of it. Yes to fighting. Yes to the baby. Yes to complicated and messy. Yes to love. Just yes. The door opened again, this time admitting Ji-won, followed by Dr. Han, the neurologist who'd been overseeing Joon-ho's care. The doctor was in his late 50s, hair graying at the temples with the kind of measured calm that came from decades of delivering bad news to hopeful families. Mrs. Kang, he said, approaching the bed, Nurse Park says you believe your husband is exhibiting signs of consciousness? Not signs, he is conscious. Ask him yourself. Dr. Han pulled a pen light from his coat pocket. Mr. Kang, I'm going to test your responses. If you can understand me, follow the light with your eyes. He moved the pen light slowly from left to right. Joon-ho tracked it, feeling the strain of eye muscles that had barely moved in days. Then Dr. Han moved it up and down, and Joon-ho followed that too, the motion easier now that he understood what was being asked. Remarkable, Dr. Han murmured. He pocketed the pen light and leaned closer. Mr. Kang, if you can hear me, blink once for yes, twice for no. Do you understand? 1 blink. Are you in pain? 2 blinks. The physical discomfort of lying immobile was there, but it didn't qualify as pain, not compared to the psychological torture of being trapped. Can you feel sensation in your extremities? In your hands and feet? 1 blink. Yes. He could feel everything, which somehow made it worse. Feeling without the ability to respond was its own special hell. Dr. Han straightened, looking at Nia with an expression that mixed professional caution with genuine surprise. This is extraordinary. Locked-in syndrome with this level of awareness is rare, and we had no indication from the brain scans that consciousness was preserved. This changes everything about his treatment plan. What does this mean? Nia asked. Can he recover? Will he be able to move again? To speak? It's too early to say. The neurological damage is extensive, but if he's this aware, if the consciousness is intact, then there's potential for rehabilitation that we hadn't considered. Neural plasticity, alternative motor pathways, experimental treatments. We need to run more tests, consult with specialists. Dr. Han pulled out his phone, already making notes. I'll contact our physical therapy department, our speech pathologist, and I want to bring in a consultant from Johns Hopkins who specializes in locked-in syndrome recovery. As the doctor continued talking, outlining plans and possibilities, Joon-ho felt the first stirring of something He hadn't allowed himself since waking into this nightmare. Hope. If they knew he was conscious, they could work with that. Onwo could develop communication systems beyond simple yes-no blinks. Could start therapy that might eventually return some function to his paralyzed body. But hope came with complications. If his medical team knew he was conscious, Minjin would know. And if Minjin knew, the Jungpa would know. And that meant every word spoken in this room, every visitor, every decision about his care would become political maneuvering in an organization that didn't tolerate weakness in its leadership. After Dr. Han left with promises to return within the hour with a full team of specialists, Nia collapsed back into the chair beside Joon-ho's bed. The adrenaline that had carried her through the discovery was draining away, leaving exhaustion in its wake. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in 6 days, she saw past the paralysis to the man trapped inside. "I don't know whether to be relieved or terrified," she said quietly. "You've been lying here for almost a week, listening to me pour my heart out, confess every secret, talk to you like you were already gone. And you heard all of it." One blink. "Yes." She laughed, but it was an unsteady sound. "I told you things I've never told anyone. About my father's suicide, about the loan sharks who came to our house when I was 22, about how I stood in my mother's care facility bathroom last month and seriously considered just—" She stopped, swallowed. "You know all of it now. Every ugly, broken piece of me?" Joon-ho wished desperately for more than binary communication. He wanted to tell her that the broken pieces were what had made him fall in love with her in the first place. That her strength in the face of impossible circumstances, her fierce loyalty to a mother who no longer recognized her, her willingness to sacrifice her own happiness for duty, those weren't flaws. They were the same qualities that had shaped him, that he recognized because he carried them too. But all he could do was blink once. "Yes, I know. And it doesn't change anything." The door opened again, but this time it wasn't medical staff. Minjun entered, his presence immediately changing the energy in the room. He was dressed in his usual dark suit, his expression carefully neutral, but Joon-ho had known his lieutenant for 15 years. He could read the tension in Minjun's shoulders, the way his eyes swept the room assessing threats before settling on Nia. "Mrs. Kang," Minjun said with a slight bow, "I heard there was activity in the boss's room. The nurses were talking." Of course they were. Hospital staff gossiped like everyone else, and the news that Kang Joon-ho was conscious would spread through the building within the hour. Which meant Joon-ho had minutes, maybe less, before the wrong people learned he was aware. Nia stood, placing herself slightly between Minjun and the bed, in a gesture that might have been unconscious but read as protective. "He can hear us. He can communicate through eye blinks. 1 for yes, 2 for no." Minjun's expression didn't change, but Joon-ho saw the microsecond of calculation behind his eyes. His lieutenant was already thinking through the implications, the risks, the strategic advantages and disadvantages of this new information. "That's good news," Minjun said carefully. "Very good news. And the family will want to know. His mother, his business associates?" "No," Nia said flatly, "not yet. Mrs. Kang, with respect, people have been asking about his condition. They have a right to—" "They have a right to nothing." Nia's voice took on the steel that Joon-ho had learned meant she'd made a decision and wouldn't be moved. "My husband is conscious but completely paralyzed. He can't defend himself, can't make his wishes known beyond yes, and no answers to questions we choose to ask him. Until we have better communication established, until the doctors have a clearer picture of his prognosis, no one outside the medical team and immediate family learns about this." Immediate family. The phrase hit Joon-ho like a blow. Nia thought she was immediate family, and legally she was. But she didn't know about Min-ho. Ada didn't know that the baby she carried made her connected to the Kang family in ways that went far beyond a contract marriage. Minjun's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Kang, I understand your concern, but there are business matters that require the boss's input, decisions that can't wait. If he's conscious and can communicate, even in a limited way, then you can ask him yes or no questions about business after his doctors clear it." Nia crossed her arms. "Right now, he needs rest and medical care, not corporate negotiations." The two of them stared at each other, and Joon-ho could see the power struggle playing out. Minjun was used to operating as Joon-ho's proxy, making decisions on his behalf. Nia was asserting her legal rights as spouse, putting herself between Joon-ho and the organization that would consume him if given the chance. She was protecting him, Joon-ho realized. She'd heard enough over 6 months of marriage to understand that his business associates weren't entirely legitimate, that the hotel empire existed on foundations she probably didn't want to examine too closely, and she was using her position as wife to shield him from the Youngpa's politics while he was vulnerable. It was exactly what he would have done in her position. Smart, strategic, protective of assets while gathering intelligence about the real situation. "I need to speak with him," Minjun said, his tone making it less request than statement. "Privately, 5 minutes." Nia looked at Joon-ho. "Do you want to speak with him?" 2 blinks. "No, not yet. Not until he'd had time to think through the implications, to understand what information Minjun needed and what could wait." "Yes, he said no," Nia told Minjun. "You can come back tomorrow." "Mrs. Kang." "Tomorrow." She moved to the door, opening it in clear dismissal. "My husband has been trapped in his own body for 6 days. He just regained the ability to communicate in the most basic way possible. He's exhausted, he's overwhelmed, and he needs time to process everything that's happened. You want 5 minutes of business talk? You can wait 24 hours. Minjun looked past her to Joon-ho, clearly hoping for contradiction. Joon-ho blinked once. "Yes. Listen to her. Give me time." After a long moment, Minjun bowed slightly. "Of course. Tomorrow then. I'm glad you're awake, boss. The Youngpa needs you." He left, but the weight of his words hung in the air. The Youngpa needs you. Translation. The organization was fracturing without clear leadership. And every day Joon-ho remained incapacitated, the vultures circled closer. Nia closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. "I don't like him." 1 blink. Joon-ho wanted to laugh if he could. Minjun wasn't designed to be liked. He was designed to be efficient, loyal, and ruthless when necessary. But he was also the only person in the Youngpa who Joon-ho trusted completely, the only one who wouldn't use his vulnerability as an opportunity for advancement. "He looks at you like you're a problem to be managed," Nia continued, "like I'm in the way of something important." She returned to the bedside. "Am I? In the way of something important?" 2 blinks. "No. You're protecting me, and I need that right now." "Good, because I meant what I said. No visitors except medical staff and people I approve until you're strong enough to advocate for yourself." She sat down, taking his hand again. The gesture was becoming familiar. Grounding. "We need to establish better communication. Yes and no is better than nothing, but it's not enough for complex conversations." She pulled out her phone, typed something, then showed him the screen. It was pulled up to an article about locked-in syndrome communication methods. The article mentions eye-tracking technology, letterboards, even brain-computer interfaces for severe cases. "We need to talk to Dr. Han about what's available, what insurance covers, what we can access quickly." She was planning, taking control of the situation with the same competence she brought to curating international art exhibitions. Joon-ho felt a surge of love so intense it was almost painful in its lack of physical outlet. "There's something else we need to talk about," Nia said, setting down her phone. "And I'm going to be direct because dancing around it seems pointless now that I know you've heard everything." She met his eyes. "The baby. You know it's not yours. You know I got pregnant before we got married, during that affair in Paris. What you don't know is that I have no way to contact the father. He disappeared. And even if I could find him, I don't know that I'd want to." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I fell in love with you, Joon-ho. Not him. Whatever I felt in Paris was intense but shallow. 6 weeks of passion doesn't compare to 6 months of actually building something real. So when I said I'm keeping this baby, I meant it. But I don't expect you to. I'm not asking you to." She was trying to release him from obligation, Joon-ho realized. Trying to make it easier for him to walk away from the marriage once he recovered, to dissolve the contract without guilt. She didn't understand that he'd already made his choice months ago, that the baby being Minho's actually made things simpler in some ways because it meant the child was Kang family blood. That Korean law would recognize the baby as his regardless of biology since they were married when the child was born. He blinked once. Yes, I hear you. I understand. And I'm not going anywhere. But Nia interpreted it differently. Yes, you understand. Okay, that's good. We can figure out the details later. I'm when you can actually speak and tell me what you want instead of me guessing based on a blink. She smiled, but it was shaky. God, this is so strange. I've been talking at you for days, and now suddenly I have to worry about what you're thinking, what you're processing, whether I'm saying the right things or making everything worse. The door opened again. Dr. Han returned, this time with an entourage. Two other doctors Joon-ho didn't recognize. A woman carrying what looked like specialized equipment, and a younger man with a tablet computer. Mr. Kang, Mrs. Kang, Dr. Han said, I've brought in our team. Dr. Sarah Chen is our neurological rehabilitation specialist from the States, and Dr. Park Jin-woo specializes in assistive communication technology. We'd like to run some tests, establish baseline function, and see what communication options might work best for your situation. The next 2 hours were a blur of assessments. They tested his eye movement range, up, down, left, right, diagonal. They measured his response time to visual stimuli. They checked pupil dilation, blink speed, the tiny micro movements that might indicate preserved motor function beneath the paralysis. Dr. Chen, who had a warm, practical manner that reminded Joon-ho of Nia, explained each test as she performed it. Locked-in syndrome usually results from damage to the pons, the part of the brainstem that controls most voluntary muscle movement. Your brain is working perfectly, Mr. Kang. The signals just aren't getting through to your body. But sometimes with intensive therapy and the right interventions, we can establish new neural pathways. It's slow, it's frustrating, but it's possible. She positioned a letterboard in his line of sight, a clear plastic sheet with the Korean alphabet arranged in a grid. I'm going to try something. I'll move my finger along the rows. When I get to the row with the letter you want, blink once. Then I'll go through that row letter by letter until you blink again. It's tedious, but it's better than yes. No questions. Let's try it. Spell your wife's name. It took almost 10 minutes. N-I-A, Naya. By the end, Joon-ho was exhausted, his eyes burning from the concentration required. But when Dr. Chen wrote the name on her notepad and showed it to him, the look on Nia's face made the effort worthwhile. This is amazing, Nia said, her voice thick with emotion. He can actually communicate. Real words, not just yes and no. It's a start, Dr. Chen said. And we can do better. Dr. Park has some eye tracking technology that might help. Dr. Park stepped forward with his tablet. This is an experimental system we've been developing. The camera tracks your eye movements and translates them into cursor control. You look at letters on the screen, the system registers where you're looking, and it types out words. It's faster than the letterboard, and with practice, some patients can reach nearly normal typing speeds. He positioned the tablet on a stand adjusted to Joon-ho's eye level. The screen showed a keyboard layout. Look at the letter you want to select. The system will highlight it when it registers your gaze. Then you blink to confirm the selection. Let's try it. It was harder than the letterboard, requiring a different kind of focus. But after several false starts, Joon-ho managed to spell out a sentence. Thank you. You're welcome, Dr. Park said, grinning. This is actually some of the best eye tracking response I've seen in a locked-in patient. Your eye control is excellent, Mr. Kang. With practice, you should be able to use this for complex communication. After the doctors left, promising to return the next day with more equipment and a comprehensive rehabilitation plan, Nia pulled her chair close to the bed and just looked at him. The afternoon light through the window cast soft shadows across her face, highlighting the exhaustion, but also the hope that hadn't been there this morning. I have about 1,000 questions, she said, but you're exhausted and I don't want to push you. So I'm going to ask just one, and then I'm going to let you rest, okay? One blink. When did you fall in love with me? Before the accident? Or are you just being kind now because I'm pregnant and scared and you're a better person than I deserve? Joon-ho stared at her, wishing he had the eye-tracking tablet right now, wishing he could tell her the whole truth, that he'd been fascinated from their first meeting, when she'd walked into the contract negotiation wearing a power suit and an expression that said she knew exactly how desperate she was, but wouldn't let anyone else see it. That fascination had become respect during their first month of marriage. Watching her navigate Seoul's elite social circles with grace, despite the microaggressions and casual racism she faced. None of that respect had become something deeper during those late-night conversations when they'd both let their guards down and admitted to the loneliness that came with their respective forms of survival. And that the moment he knew he loved her was 3 months ago, when she'd come home from visiting her mother in Atlanta and broken down crying in the mansion's entrance hall. He'd held her while she sobbed about watching dementia steal her mother piece by piece, about the guilt of being so far away, about the fear of losing the last person who'd known her father. And when she'd finally stopped crying and looked up at him, she'd said, "Thank you for not telling me it'll be okay. I'm so tired of people lying to make me feel better." That was the moment when she'd trusted him with her pain instead of her strength. But he couldn't explain all of that with a single blink, so he just closed his eyes once. "Yes, before the accident. I loved you before." Nia's eyes welled with tears. Okay, that's..." She pressed her hands to her face. "I need you to know something too. I meant what I said before. About the baby, about staying, about fighting for you. This isn't obligation or guilt or anything, except the fact that I can't imagine my life without you in it anymore." She stood up, leaned over the bed, and very gently pressed her lips to his forehead. The kiss was chaste, careful, mindful of his complete inability to respond. But Joon-ho felt it like electricity through his entire paralyzed body. The warmth of her mouth, the softness of her breath, the tenderness in the gesture. "Rest," she whispered. "I'll be here when you wake up. I'm always going to be here." After she settled into the chair with her laptop, clearly planning to work while maintaining her vigil, Joon-ho let himself drift into something resembling sleep. It wasn't the unconsciousness of before, but rather a state where his mind could process everything that had happened while his body recovered from the exhausting effort of communication. He dreamed, or maybe just thought intensely with his eyes closed. Images of Nia in Paris, though he'd never actually seen her there. His imagination filling in details from the surveillance photos. Minho's face, younger and less haunted, before he'd fled the family. Their father on his deathbed, gasping out final orders about transitioning the business to legitimacy. The black SUV accelerating toward the Mercedes in the second before impact. And then, threading through it all, Nia's voice. "I fell in love with you. I'm keeping the baby. I'm not going anywhere." When Joon-ho surfaced back to awareness, he couldn't tell how much time had passed. The light through the window had shifted to evening gold. Nia was still there, typing on her laptop with fierce concentration. The hospital sounds continued beyond the door, the steady rhythm of an institution that never slept. His phone buzzed on the side table. Nia glanced at it, then held it up so he could see the screen. The name displayed was Mother. "Your mom has been calling every few hours," Nia said. "Do you want me to answer? Tell her about your condition?" Joon-ho thought about his mother. Elegant, cold, a woman who'd survived decades as a crime boss's wife by learning when to see and when to be strategically blind. She would want to visit, would want to assess his condition herself, and she would see through Nia's protective barriers instantly. 2 blinks. Not yet. "Okay, I'll keep putting her off, but she's persistent. She'll show up eventually whether we invite her or not." Nia set the phone down. "There's something else. Minjun left a message. Someone named Mr. Kwon wants to visit. Says he's your second in command, needs to discuss urgent business matters." I told him no, but he's pushing back, saying there are time-sensitive decisions that need your input. Kwon. Ambitious, dangerous Kwon, who'd been circling for years waiting for an opportunity to advance. If he learned Joon-ho was conscious but severely limited in communication, he'd see it as the perfect situation. Enough awareness to provide legitimacy to decisions, but not enough capability to actually lead. 2 blinks. Definite no. "That's what I thought. I don't trust him. He has the same look as Minjun, but without the loyalty." She paused. "How much of your business is actually legitimate? The hotels, the real estate? Is it all connected to something else?" This was the conversation Joon-ho had been dreading. The moment when he'd have to confirm what she probably suspected. When the careful separation between his public face and his real operation would dissolve. He could lie through a mission, give her deniability, or he could trust her with the truth and hope she didn't run. He blinked once. Yes, it's connected to something else. Nia nodded slowly, as if he'd confirmed something she'd already concluded. Korean Mafia, the Jungpa. I've heard the name whispered at business dinners. I've also seen the way certain people treat you, like you're simultaneously dangerous and essential. I've been pretending not to notice for 6 months because the money was solving my problems, and I didn't want to look too closely at where it came from. One blink. Yes. And now I'm in the middle of it, she said quietly. Your wife, which makes me an asset or a liability depending on who's doing the calculation. That's why you don't want visitors. That's why you don't trust Kwon. Someone in your organization tried to kill you, didn't they? The accident wasn't an accident. One blink. Nia was quiet for a long moment. Joon-ho watched her process the information, watched her face cycle through emotions, fear, calculation, resignation, and finally something that looked almost like resolve. I should be scared, she said finally. I should be packing my bags and running back to Atlanta and dissolving this marriage before I get dragged down with whatever's happening in your world. That would be the smart thing, the safe thing. She met his eyes. But I'm not going to do that. Do you want to know why? One blink. Because for the first time in 8 years, since my father died and left us drowning in debt and shame, someone has stood between me and the chaos. You did that. You married me knowing I was a disaster, knowing I needed you more than you needed me, and you never once made me feel like a charity case. You taught me to cook Korean food because you knew I was lonely. You learned about black hair care because you overheard me on the phone with my friend complaining about Seoul's beauty supply limitations. You held me when I cried, and you never, not once, asked me to be anything other than exactly who I am. Tears tracked down her face, but her voice remained steady. So if you're in danger, if people in your organization want you dead, then they're going to have to go through me first, because you protected me when I had nothing to offer in return. And I'm going to do the same for you. The next morning brought Dr. Chen back with a physical therapist and the eye tracking system on a wheeled stand. Nia had spent the night in the hospital room despite the nurse's protests, curled up in the reclining chair with a blanket someone had brought her. Joon-ho had watched her sleep, grateful that locked-in syndrome at least allowed him that, the ability to see her, to track the rise and fall of her breathing, to memorize the way her face softened in rest. Morning, Mr. Kang, doctor. Chen said cheerfully, positioning the tablet at his eye level. We're going to start rehabilitation today. Small movements first. I want to see if we can get any response beyond the eye blinks. Mrs. Kang, you're welcome to stay, but I should warn you that this process can be frustrating. Progress in locked-in syndrome is measured in millimeters, not miles. Nia moved to stand beside the bed, taking Joon-ho's hand. I'm staying. For the next hour, Dr. Chen worked methodically through tests. She placed his fingers in different positions and asked him to try moving them. Nothing. She tested for any response in his toes, his facial muscles beyond the eyes, his ability to control his breathing pattern. The results were universally disappointing. His body remained stubbornly unresponsive to every command his brain sent. It's early, doctor, Shiro Chen said, making notes on her tablet. The neural pathways are disrupted, but they're not necessarily destroyed. Think of it like a highway system where several major bridges are out. The traffic can't flow the normal way, but sometimes the brain finds alternate routes, side roads, if you will. It takes time and repetition. She moved to stand where Joon-ho could see her clearly. I'm going to be honest with you, Mr. Kang. Full recovery from locked-in syndrome is rare. Most patients regain some function, perhaps limited speech, perhaps some finger movement. But returning to your previous level of mobility and independence, the odds aren't in our favor. She paused. However, I've seen patients defy those odds. And based on your level of consciousness and cognitive function, you're already ahead of many cases I've treated. So we're going to work like hell and see what happens. Agreed? One blink. Yes, agreed. The physical therapist, a woman named Kim Mi-young, took over next. She manipulated Joon-ho's limbs through passive range of motion exercises, explaining as she worked, "We need to prevent your muscles from atrophying completely and your joints from freezing up. Even though you can't actively move right now, passive movement maintains some baseline function. And who knows, maybe one day those motor signals will start getting through. And when they do, you'll have muscles ready to respond." Joon-ho felt every movement, the stretch in his shoulder as she lifted his arm, the pull in his hip as she bent his knee, the sensation of his fingers being flexed and extended. Feeling everything while controlling nothing was its own special torture, a constant reminder that his consciousness remained trapped in a body that refused to obey. After the therapy session ended, Nia helped Dr. Chen set up the eye-tracking system more permanently. They positioned it on an adjustable arm that could be moved aside when not needed, but quickly repositioned for communication. "Practice with it," Dr. Chen instructed. "The more you use it, the faster and more accurate you'll become. Think of it like learning to type again, except instead of fingers, you're using eye movements." Once they were alone, Nia pulled up the keyboard on the screen. "Okay, I have questions, and now you can actually answer them in complete sentences instead of yes-no blinks. So let's start with the important one." She took a breath. "Who tried to kill you?" Joon-ho focused on the letters, his eyes moving deliberately across the keyboard. The system highlighted each letter as he looked at it, and he blinked to confirm selection. It was slow, exhausting work, each word requiring intense concentration. DONTKNOW. "You don't know, or you can't tell me." DONTKNOWYET. "But you have suspicions?" YES. "Is it Kwon, the man who keeps calling?" MAYBE. Nia nodded slowly. "And Minjun, can we trust him?" Joon-ho hesitated. Trust was complicated in the Yongpa. Minjun was loyal, had been loyal for 15 years. But loyalty to what? To Joon-ho personally, or to the organization? If those two things came into conflict, which would Minjun choose? MINJUNLOYALBUT, but what? HEFOLLOWSORDERS. Whose orders? MINEWHILEIMALIVE. The implication hung between them. "While I'm alive." We meaning if Joon-ho died, Minjun's loyalty would transfer to whoever took control of the Yongpa. It was the nature of organized crime. Personal loyalty only extended as far as power did. "So we need you to get better," Nia said. "Not just for your sake, but because the alternative is you dying and me being left alone to navigate a criminal organization I don't understand." YES. "Great, no pressure." She ran a hand over her face. "Okay, next question. Your brother, Minho. Minjun mentioned him yesterday. He said Minho wanted to come back to Seoul to see you, but Minjun told him no." "Why?" Joon-ho's heart would have raced if his autonomic nervous system had been under his control. This was the conversation he'd been dreading, the moment when he'd have to explain connections that Nia couldn't possibly have guessed. MINHOLEFTFAMILYTENYEARSAGO. "Left the family business, you mean? The Yongpa?" YES. "And if he comes back?" DANGEROUS. "For him or for you?" BOTH. Nia was quiet for a moment, processing. "He's living under a fake name somewhere, isn't he? Hiding from the organization because they don't let people just leave." YES. "Where is he?" Joon-ho hesitated. This was where it got complicated, where the truth became a minefield. He could tell her Minho was in Paris, but that risked her making connections he wasn't ready to address yet. Or he could be vague, which would just postpone the inevitable conversation. The door opened before he could decide. Minjun entered, and this time he wasn't alone. He was followed by a woman Joon-ho recognized immediately. His mother, Kang Joon-ho, is dressed in an elegant black dress suit that screamed old money and older power. At 68, she maintained the kind of beauty that came from excellent genetics and better plastic surgery, her silver hair cut in a sharp bob that framed a face that revealed nothing. "Joon-ho," she said, moving directly to the bedside without acknowledging Nia's presence. She studied his face with the same critical assessment she'd used throughout his childhood, looking for weakness, for cracks in the armor. "They tell me you're conscious, that you can communicate." One blink. Sun-hee's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Relief, perhaps, or calculation. Good. The family needs you alert. There are decisions that can't wait, and Minjin has been handling things in your absence, but there are limits to his authority. Mrs. Kang, Nia said, her tone carefully polite but firm. The doctors have said that Joon-ho needs rest and limited stress. Business discussions should wait until... You're the American, Sun-hee said, finally turning to look at Nia. Her gaze swept over Nia in a single assessing glance that managed to convey both dismissal and evaluation. The contract wife, how convenient that you're still here. Nia's spine straightened. I'm his wife, and I'll be here as long as he needs me. Of course you will. The contract doesn't expire for another 6 months, and I imagine you'd like to collect your full payment. Soon he returned her attention to Joon-ho. We need to discuss the Busan situation. The Sangyong-pa are moving into our territory and Kwan wants to respond with force. Minjin has been holding him back, but we need your decision. Or do we go to war, or do we negotiate? This was why she'd come. Not maternal concern, but business necessity. Joon-ho felt a familiar mix of resentment and resignation. His mother had never been soft, had never pretended that family bonds mattered more than organizational survival. She'd raised him to be a leader, not a son. The eye-tracking system was still positioned within his line of sight. He focused on it, spelling out his response. Negotiate, negotiate, Sun-hee read aloud. With what leverage? They tried to kill you. They see weakness. NOTWEAKNESSSTRATEGY strategy. His mother's lips curved in something that might have been approval. You always did prefer the long game. Very well, Minjin will set up a meeting with their leadership. But Joon-ho, understand this. If you can't recover enough to lead properly, the Jung-pa will need new leadership. The organization won't wait indefinitely for you to regain motor function. She meant it as a warning, but Joon-ho heard the subtext. She was already planning for succession, already positioning pieces on the board in case he remained locked in permanently. It was the practical thing to do, the necessary thing. It was also a knife in the gut from the woman who'd given birth to him. That's enough, Nia said, her voice sharp. He's been conscious for less than 24 hours. He's exhausted from physical therapy and communication practice. You can discuss business succession when he's had time to recover, or better yet, you can handle it yourself and leave him alone. Sun-hee looked at Nia with something approaching interest. Ash, you have spine. Good. You'll need it if you plan to stay in this family. She turned back to Joon-ho. I'll return tomorrow. Rest well, my son. After she left, with Minjun trailing behind her, Nia sank into the chair and let out a long breath. Your mother is terrifying. Yes. She really doesn't care that you almost died, does she? She just cares about the organization. COMPLICATED. Is everything in your life complicated? Yes, Nia laughed despite herself. Fair enough. My life isn't exactly simple either. She glanced at her phone. It's almost noon. I should check on my mother. The care facility sends daily updates, and I need to eat something. Do you want me to bring you anything? I know you can't eat solid food yet, but maybe... She stopped, looking at him with sudden horror. Oh God, you can't eat. You can feel hunger. Can't you? You can feel everything, but you can't do anything about it. One blink. Yes, the feeding tube kept him alive, but it didn't satisfy the psychological need to eat, to taste, to experience food as pleasure rather than pure nutrition. I'm so sorry. I keep forgetting. No, that's not true. I keep not fully understanding what this must be like for you, being trapped like this. She squeezed his hand. We're going to get you better. I don't care what the statistics say. We're going to find a way. After Nia left to get lunch and make her phone calls, Joon-ho was alone with his thoughts and the steady beep of monitors. He practiced with the eye-tracking system, spelling out words to no one, building speed and accuracy. The system was remarkably responsive, but it still required intense concentration. Each word was a small victory against the paralysis that imprisoned him. He was in the middle of typing out a message to himself, A mental exercise, really, when the door opened again. For a moment, Joon-ho thought it was Min-jun returning, or perhaps one of the nurses. But the figure that entered was someone he hadn't seen in 10 years, someone he'd half convinced himself he'd never see again. Kang Min-ho looked older than his 47 years. His hair was longer than it had been in the old family photos, pulled back in a small ponytail. He wore jeans and a paint-stained shirt under a leather jacket, the uniform of the struggling artist he'd chosen to become. His face was thinner than Joon-ho remembered, hollow in a way that spoke of too many missed meals and too much stress. But it was undeniably his brother. Min-ho closed the door softly behind him and approached the bed with the kind of caution someone might use approaching a wild animal. "Hyung," he said quietly, using the familial term for older brother. "I know Min-jun said I shouldn't come. I know it's dangerous. But when I heard about the accident, I couldn't. I had to see you." Joon-ho stared at his brother, 1,000 thoughts colliding. "You stupid bastard. You came back. You're going to get yourself killed. Also, I missed you. Also, Nia is pregnant with your baby and she has no idea you're my brother." Min-ho moved closer, studying Joon-ho's face. "They said you have locked-in syndrome, that you're conscious but paralyzed. Is that true? If you can hear me, blink once." One blink. Min-ho's face crumpled. "God, Hyung, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for leaving, for staying away, for not being here when you needed me. I know you probably hate me. I know I abandoned the family, abandoned you, chose art over duty. But you have to understand, I couldn't be what Father wanted. I couldn't be a killer, couldn't make people hurt in the name of profit and power. I had to leave or I was going to destroy myself." One blink. "I understand. I've always understood." "Min-jun told me about your wife," Min-ho continued. "He said she's American, that it was a contract marriage. He didn't say much else, but..." He paused, something shifting in his expression. "What's her name?" This was it, the moment where everything unraveled. Joon-ho could refuse to answer, could blink in a way that suggested he didn't want to discuss it. But Min-ho would learn eventually, especially if he stayed in Seoul. He had better to control the revelation than let it happen chaotically. The eye-tracking system was still active. Joon-ho focused on it, spelling out the name. Nia. Min-ho stared at the screen, his face going white. "Nia, as in Nia Thompson?" One blink. "The art curator? Black American woman? About 45? Worked in Seoul for years?" One blink. Min-ho stepped back from the bed, his hand going to his mouth. No, that can't be the same person. That's not possible." But clearly from his reaction, it was possible. It was real. Min-ho understood exactly who Nia was, which meant Joon-ho's suspicions were confirmed. "I knew her in Paris," Min-ho said, his voice barely above a whisper. 6 months ago, there was a relationship. Brief, intense. She left to come back to Seoul, said she was getting married for money. I thought it was someone else, some random Cheeble heir she'd never met. Not you, never you." One blink. "Yes, me." "Does she know?" Min-ho's eyes were wild now, panicked. "Does she know that Kim Min from Paris is actually Kang Min-ho, your brother?" Two blinks. "No." "Oh, God." Min-ho sank into the visitor's chair, his head in his hands. "Oh, God, this is impossible. I can't..." He looked up suddenly. "Wait, you said it was a contract marriage. So you're not actually... You and her aren't..." How did Joon-ho explain this through an eye-tracking system? That the contract marriage had become real feelings? That he'd fallen in love with the same woman Min-ho had loved? That the situation was so tangled that there was no clean way through it? Complicated, complicated, Min-ho read. "That's an understatement, Hyung. He stopped, his expression changing as another thought occurred to him. "I need to see her. I need to talk to her. Explain why I disappeared. Tell her... N-O." The word appeared on screen, harsh and definitive. "What do you mean, no? I have a right to..." "Sheispreggnant, Min-ho froze. The color drained from his face completely, leaving him looking ill. "Pregnant. She's pregnant." One blink. "With my..." He couldn't seem to finish the sentence. From Paris. From our... Oh, God. Oh, God, I got her pregnant, and then I disappeared, and she married you, thinking she'd never see me again. Me, yes. I need to talk to her, Min-ho said again. But this time it was pleading rather than demanding. I need to tell her I'm sorry, that I didn't know, that I would have... What? What would I have done? He laughed, a broken sound. I'm a broke artist living in a studio in Paris with a price on my head from the Jungpa. What could I possibly offer her that you can't? Money? Stability? Protection? I have nothing. Yo-you, Haveherheart. The words appeared on screen, and Joon-ho felt the truth of them like a blade. Min-ho had Nia's passion, the part of her that had come alive in Paris, that had felt things she'd buried under layers of practical survival. What Joon-ho had was different, deeper perhaps, but less combustible. That was 6 months ago, Min-ho said. She left me, Hyung. She chose the contract with you over staying with me. That tells me everything I need to know about where her heart is. Shelovesmenow. Now, Min-ho repeated. You said it was a contract marriage, so what changed? Time. Min-ho was quiet for a long moment. Wait, you fell in love with her? Yes. And she fell in love with you. Yes. But she's carrying my baby. Yes. So what do we do? Min-ho looked at his brother with an expression that was equal parts desperation and hope. What happens now? Before Joon-ho could begin spelling out an answer, the door opened. Nia entered carrying a bag from a nearby cafe, her attention on her phone as she walked. She was mid-sentence talking to someone on the phone. Yes, I'll have the contracts reviewed by Friday. No, the shipping delay shouldn't affect the exhibition timeline. We have... She looked up and saw Min-ho. The phone slipped from her hand, clattering on the floor. Her face went through a rapid succession of emotions: shock, disbelief, confusion, and something that might have been joy before it was overtaken by horror. Kim Min? Her voice was barely a whisper. Min-ho stood slowly, his eyes locked on her face. Hello, Nia. What are you... How did you... She looked between Min-ho and Joon-ho, her expression shifting to something close to panic. Why are you here? How do you even know about my husband? Nia, Min-ho said carefully, I need to tell you something. Kim Min isn't my real name. I've been using it for years because I was running from my family. My real name is Kang Min-ho. He paused, letting the surname sink in. I'm Joon-ho's brother. The cafe bag dropped from Nia's hands. Coffee splattered across the floor, spreading in a dark pool that no one moved to clean up. She stared at Min-ho, then at Joon-ho, then back at Min-ho, her mind clearly trying to process information that didn't make sense. You're his brother, she repeated slowly. Shh, the baby I'm carrying is mine, Min-ho finished. Biologically, yes. Nia's legs seemed to give out. She caught herself on the wall, sliding down to sit on the floor amid the spilled coffee. Her face had gone gray, her breathing rapid and shallow. She looked at Joon-ho, and the betrayal in her eyes was devastating. You knew, she said. When I told you about Paris, about the affair, about the baby, you already knew it was your brother. You've known this whole time and you didn't tell me. One blink. Yes, guilty as charged. Oh, God! She pressed her hands to her face. Oh, God, this is... I don't even know what this is. A nightmare? A cosmic joke? I fell in love with one brother while pregnant with the other brother's baby. And neither of you thought to mention that you were related. I didn't know he was your husband, Min-ho said. I swear, Nia, I had no idea the man you were marrying was Joon-ho. I wouldn't have, if I'd known. You wouldn't have what? Nia's voice was rising, hysteria creeping in. You wouldn't have slept with me? You wouldn't have disappeared without a trace? What exactly would you have done differently? I don't know, Min-ho admitted, but I would have tried to do something, to be there for you. Nia laughed, but it was an ugly sound. Be there for me? You're a fugitive from a criminal organization living under a fake name. How exactly would you have been there for me? She pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the coffee soaking into her jeans. This is insane. This entire situation is completely insane. She looked at Joon-ho, and there were tears streaming down her face now. I trusted you. I thought, I thought what we had was real. But you've been lying to me this entire time. You married me knowing I was pregnant with your brother's baby. What was that? Some kind of power play? A way to control him? A way to keep the baby in the family? Joon-ho focused desperately on the eye tracking system. ILOVEYOU. The words appeared on screen, simple and insufficient. You love me, Nia repeated. Great, wonderful. That makes everything better, right? Except you love me while lying to me, while manipulating me. Then what is it? PROTECTION. Protection, she repeated bitterly. Right. Because I'm too stupid to handle the truth. Too fragile to be trusted with information about my own life, my own baby, my own... Her voice broke. I can't do this. I can't be in this room right now. She turned toward the door. Min-ho moved to block her path. Nia, please, let me explain. Explain what? She pushed past him. Explain how you're actually a criminal's son hiding under a fake name. Explain how you got me pregnant and then vanished. Explain how you're related to the man I married. What exactly is there to explain that makes any of this okay? She wrenched open the door and fled. Min-ho started to follow, but Joon-ho made a sound. The first vocalization he'd managed since the accident, a strangled noise somewhere between a grunt and a moan. Min-ho stopped, looking back. I have to go after her. N.O. She's carrying my baby. Hyung. I can't just... LETHERGO. And if she doesn't come back? Min-ho's voice was anguished. What if she runs? What if she decides both of us are too damaged, too complicated, too dangerous? What if she chooses to raise the baby alone rather than deal with this mess? THENWEDESERVEIT. The words hung on screen, brutal in their honesty. Min-ho stared at them, then at his brother, and slowly nodded. Yeah, he said quietly. I guess we do. Nia didn't return that evening, or the next morning, or the morning after that. Joon-ho lay in his hospital bed, trapped in his paralyzed body, and experienced a new kind of torture. The torture of knowing he'd destroyed the one good thing in his life and being unable to do anything to fix it. Min-ho stayed. Against every instinct for self-preservation, against Min-jun's increasingly urgent warnings that his presence in Seoul was drawing attention from the wrong people, Min-ho refused to leave. He set up camp in Joon-ho's hospital room, sleeping in the reclining chair, eating vending machine food, and serving as his brother's voice when nurses and doctors came through. She's not answering her phone, Min-ho said on the second day, staring at his cell. I've called 30 times, texted 50. She's either blocked me or thrown her phone in the Han River. Joon-ho blinked twice. No, she hasn't blocked you. How do you know? BECAUSESHEWOULDNTRUN. She ran from this room pretty effectively. TOPROCESSNOTTOESCAPE. You sound very certain for a man who just admitted to lying to her for 6 months. IKNOWHER. Min-ho was quiet for a moment. Yeah, I guess you do. Better than I do anyway. 6 weeks in Paris versus 6 months of marriage. You win the intimacy contest, Hyung. NNOTACONTEST. Isn't it, though? Min-ho leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. She loved me first, in Paris. That burning, desperate kind of love she talked about. But she chose you. Chose stability over passion, duty over desire. And then she fell in love with you in a different way. A deeper way, according to her confession you overheard. So which love is real? The first one or the second one? BOTH. How can both be real? DIFFERENTKINDSOFLOVE. That's convenient philosophy from the man who won. IDIDNTWINSHELEFT. Min-ho couldn't argue with that. They sat in silence for a while. Brothers separated by 10 years of absence, and bound by the same woman neither of them knew how to reach. On the third day, Min-jun arrived with news that changed everything. He entered the room, took one look at Min-ho, and his expression hardened. You need to leave, Min-jun said flatly. Now. Tonight. I'm not going anywhere until Mr. Kwon knows you're here. Minjun's voice was tense. He's been gathering support in the Yongpa, making arguments that the boss is too compromised to lead. Your presence gives him ammunition. He's saying the boss is going soft, protecting a deserter, planning to bring you back into the organization to challenge Kwon's authority. That's ridiculous, Minho said. I don't want anything to do with the Yongpa. Doesn't matter what you want. Matters what Kwon can make people believe. And right now, and I with the boss unable to defend himself, Kwon is winning the political game. Minjun turned to Joon-ho. Boss, I need orders. Do I remove Minho from Seoul by force, or do you want to explain to the Yongpa why you're protecting a deserter? Joon-ho focused on the eye tracking system. Minhostays. That's a mistake, Minjun said. A bad one. Mymistaketomake. Not when it affects the stability of the organization, not when it puts you at greater risk. Minjun's jaw was tight. Boss, I've followed your orders for 15 years. I've never questioned your decisions. But this one? This is personal, not strategic. You're choosing family over the Yongpa. YES. The single word hung on the screen, definitive and unapologetic. Minjun stared at it, then at Joon-ho, and something shifted in his expression. Tom, you really have changed. The old boss, the one before the accident, he would never have made that choice. Family was always secondary to the organization. PEOPLECHANGE. Yeah, Minjun said quietly. I guess they do. All right, Minho stays, but I'm assigning protection. You don't leave this hospital without 2 of my men. You don't make contact with anyone in the Yongpa, and if Kwon makes a move, you run first and ask questions later. Understood? Minho nodded. Understood. After Minjun left, Minho looked at his brother with an expression that was hard to read. Thank you for protecting me even when it's stupid and dangerous and probably going to cause you more problems. FAMILY. Yeah, family. Minho's voice was rough. I forgot what that felt like. Oh, being protected instead of abandoned. YOUWERENEVERABANDONED. I left. That's the definition of abandonment. YOUSURVEVEDIUNDERSTOOD. Minho's eyes welled with tears. I never thought I'd hear you say that. Father always said I was weak for leaving, that real men stayed and fought. FATHERWASWRONGABOUTMANYTHINGS. And you figured that out when? Before or after you became exactly what he wanted you to be? AFTERIMETNIA. The words appeared on screen. Simple truth stripped of pretense. Nia had changed him, had made him question the foundations he'd built his identity on, had shown him that strength could look like vulnerability, that power could look like choosing love over duty. She's good at that, Minho said. Changing people. She changed me too, in Paris. Made me think I could be something other than a fugitive artist drowning in debt and fear. For 6 weeks, I felt like a real person instead of a ghost. THENWHYDIDYOULETHERGO. Because she was right. I had nothing to offer her. No money, no stability, no future that didn't involve looking over my shoulder for Yongpa enforcers. What was I supposed to do? Ask her to give up everything to live in poverty with me? That's not love, Hyung. That's selfishness. SOYOUMADETHECHOICEFORHER. Yeah, I did. Minho stood up, moved to the window, and I've been regretting it every day since. But what choice did I really have? What choice did she have? She needed money for her mother's care. I couldn't provide that. You could. So she made the practical decision. When and I pretended it was fine. ITWASNTFINE. No, it wasn't. Minho pressed his forehead against the glass. I got drunk for 3 days after she left. Then I sobered up and tried to find her. Showed up at her old apartment in Paris, but she'd already cleared out. Called the gallery where she used to work, but they said she'd moved back to Seoul. I almost followed her, almost bought a plane ticket and came back here to find her. To hell with the danger. WYDIDNTYOU. Because I'm a coward. Because I convinced myself that if she'd really loved me, she would have stayed. That her leaving meant I'd been fooling myself about the whole thing. He turned back to face Joon-ho. And then I found out she married you, and it felt like confirmation. She'd chosen the rich brother, the successful one, and the one who could give her everything I couldn't. It made sense. It hurt like hell, but it made sense. Shedidnknower Would it have changed anything if she did? She still needed the money. She still would have had to choose between passion and survival. The fact that her two options were brothers instead of strangers, that just makes it more complicated, not less. The door opened. Both men looked up, hoping it was Nia. Instead, it was Dr. Chen with her therapy equipment. "Morning, Mr. Kang. Ready for your session?" She paused, noticing the tension in the room. "Or should I come back later?" One blink. No. Now is fine. The physical therapy session was brutal. Dr. Chen worked through the same exercises as before: passive range of motion, attempts to stimulate muscle response, wide tests for any emerging motor function. The results remained disappointing. Joon-ho's body continued its stubborn refusal to cooperate, leaving him trapped in paralysis that felt increasingly permanent. "I know this is frustrating," Dr. Chen said, manipulating his left leg through a series of stretches. "But we're maintaining baseline function. That matters. And sometimes recovery and locked-in syndrome happens suddenly. Patients go months with no progress, and then one day something clicks and they start regaining function. We don't understand why. The brain is still a mystery in many ways." After she left, Min-ho helped reposition Joon-ho in the bed, a task he'd learned from the nurses, adjusting pillows and bed angle to prevent pressure sores. The intimacy of the care was strange. Each brothers who'd barely touched in childhood now negotiating the physical necessities of severe disability. "I should learn to do more," Min-ho said. "The nurses show me stuff, but there's so much. Feeding tube maintenance, catheter care, skin checks, all of it. If Nia doesn't come back, someone needs to—" The door opened. This time it was her. Nia stood in the doorway, and she looked like she hadn't slept in 3 days. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hair was pulled back messily. She wore the same clothes she'd fled in, now rumpled and coffee-stained. But she was here. She'd come back. "I need to talk to both of you," she said, her voice flat with exhaustion. "And I need you to listen without interrupting. Because I've spent 72 hours thinking about this, and if I don't say it all at once, I'm going to lose my nerve." She moved further into the room, maintaining distance from both of them. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice was steady. "I've been staying with a friend, another curator, someone who doesn't know anything about my life, who let me hide in her guest room and didn't ask questions. And I've been thinking about what happens next, about whether I stay or run, about whether I can forgive you both for lying to me, for manipulating me, for making decisions about my life without including me." She looked at Joon-ho first. "You knew about Paris. You knew I'd slept with your brother, gotten pregnant with his baby, and you married me anyway without telling me. That's not protection, Joon-ho. That's control. That's you deciding what information I can handle, what choices I'm allowed to make. You took away my agency." One blink. Guilty. "And you," she turned to Min-ho, "you disappeared without explanation, didn't leave contact information, didn't try to find me after I left Paris. I thought maybe you regretted the whole thing, that I'd been some kind of mistake you were relieved to see go. Do you have any idea how that felt, finding out I was pregnant and having no way to tell you?" "I tried to find you," Min-ho said. "I went to your apartment, called your gallery. Not hard enough." Nia's voice was sharp. "If you'd really wanted to find me, you would have. You're a Kang. You have resources, connections. You chose not to use them because it was easier to let me go than to fight for me." Min-ho flinched but didn't argue. "So here's what's going to happen," Nia continued. "I'm staying, not because of the contract, not because of the money, not because I'm pregnant and scared and don't know what else to do. I'm staying because despite everything, despite the lies and the manipulation and the absolute insanity of this situation, I meant what I said in my confession. I love you, Joon-ho. The real you, not the image you project. The man who cries at poetry and learns to cook food that reminds me of home and holds me when my mother doesn't recognize my voice on the phone. She moved closer to the bed. But I'm not going to be lied to anymore. No more secrets. No more protecting me by keeping me ignorant. If there's danger, I need to know. If there are decisions to be made, I need to be part of them. If your criminal organization is falling apart, I need to understand what that means for us. You don't get to treat me like a civilian anymore. I'm in this now whether I wanted to be or not. Siri, yes. Good, we agree on that at least. She turned to Min-ho. And you? I don't know what happens with you. You're the biological father of this baby. You're Joon-ho's brother. You're also the man I had an affair with before my marriage. This situation is messy and complicated, and I don't have answers yet. What do you want from me? Min-ho asked quietly. I don't know. I don't know if I want you in this baby's life. I don't know if it's safe for you to be around us. I don't know if I can look at you without remembering Paris and everything I felt then, and whether that's fair to Joon-ho. She pressed her hands to her face. Oh, I don't know anything except that you're here and you're not leaving, and somehow we all have to figure out how to exist in the same space without destroying each other. I can leave, Min-ho offered. If that's easier. If that's what you need. No, Nia said. Joon-ho needs you. He can't say it, can't say much of anything right now. But I've seen the way he looks at you. He spent 10 years thinking you were gone forever. Now you're back, and he's trapped in a body that won't let him even hug you. So you're staying. For him, if not for me. She returned her attention to Joon-ho. I talked to Dr. Chen this morning. She updated me on your progress. Or lack of progress. Her voice wavered. She said that most locked-in syndrome patients who don't show motor recovery in the first few weeks don't recover at all. That you might be like this permanently. Paralyzed, dependent, unable to speak or move or do any of the things that made you who you are. One blink. Yes, I know. And you're okay with that? You're okay with me signing up to spend the rest of my life as your caretaker? One blink. Why? Why would you want that for me? For yourself? Joon-ho focused on the eye-tracking system, spelling out words with painstaking slowness. BECAUSELOVEIASNTABOUTWHATICANDOFORYOU. Nia read the words on screen, and her face crumpled. She sank into the chair beside the bed, took his hand, and pressed it against her cheek. Her tears were warm against his skin, one of the few sensations he could still fully appreciate. You're an idiot, she said through the tears. A manipulative, secretive, impossible idiot. And I love you so much it terrifies me. Min-ho cleared his throat. I should give you some privacy. Stay, Nia said without looking at him. This involves you too. All of this involves you. She kept Joon-ho's hand pressed to her face, her eyes closed. We're going to have to figure out how to be a family, the three of us and this baby. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's even possible. But we're going to try, because the alternative is everyone being miserable and alone. A family, Min-ho repeated, as if testing the word. The two brothers and the woman they both love, and the baby that belongs to all of us and none of us. Do you have a better suggestion? Nia asked. No, I really don't. Min-ho moved to stand on the other side of the bed, looking down at his brother. What do you think, Hyung? Can this possibly work? Joon-ho wanted to say that families were defined by choice as much as biology, that the Jungpa had taught him that blood didn't guarantee loyalty, and loyalty didn't require blood, that if they chose each other, chose to build something together despite the mess and the complications, then maybe it could work. Maybe they could create something new from the wreckage of their individual lives. But the eye-tracking system was too slow for philosophy, so he kept it simple. WEWILLMAKEITWORK. You sound very certain, Nia said. BECAUSEIAVEBOTHOFYOUANDTHATISENOUGH. The words hung on screen, a promise and a declaration. Nia was crying again, but softer now. Min-ho had his hand on Joon-ho's shoulder, the first intentional touch between brothers in a decade. And Joon-ho, not trapped in his paralyzed body, felt something he hadn't felt since before the accident. Hope. Not hope for recovery. The doctors had made it clear that was unlikely. But hope for something different. Hope for a life that wasn't the one he'd planned, but might be better in ways he couldn't yet imagine. Hope for family, for love, for second chances that came wrapped in complications, but were real nonetheless. The door opened again. This time it was Min Jun, and his expression was grim. "We have a problem," he said. "Kwon has called for a formal Yungpa Council meeting. He's challenging the boss's authority, saying that someone who can't speak or move can't lead the organization. The meeting is set for next week. If the boss can't defend himself, then Kwon takes over," Nia finished. "And what? He decides what happens to all of us." "Essentially, yes." Minjin looked at Joon-ho. "Boss, I can buy us time. Delay the meeting, challenge the authority of the council to override your leadership. But eventually, you're going to have to prove you can still run the Yungpa. And I don't know how you do that from a hospital bed, communicating through eye blinks." Neither did Joon-ho, but as he looked at Nia holding his hand, at Min-ho standing guard like he had something worth protecting, at Minjin waiting for orders he trusted would come, Joon-ho realized something important. He'd spent his entire life building power. Now he needed to learn how to wield it without the tools he'd always relied on. His physical presence, his voice, his ability to intimidate and command through sheer force of personality. So now he needed to find a different kind of strength, the kind that came from letting people see his vulnerability instead of hiding it, the kind that came from trusting others to be his hands and voice when his own failed him, the kind that came from choosing love and family over the organization that had defined him. It would be the hardest thing he'd ever done. But as he blinked once, "Yes, I understand. Yes, I'll find a way," he thought maybe it was also the most important.